All right. Thank you all for coming to today's panel, Drip Too Hard. Super excited. Today's conversation is centered around the convergence of fashion and music. I will be moderating your panel today. My name is Elaina Bernstein. I am the music editor at Hypebeast, and yeah, a lot of my work sort of focuses on the intersection of fashion and music, specifically the underground music scene. So without further ado, would love for my lovely panelists to introduce themselves, just tell us who you are, a little bit about how you got to where you are today. Emma, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Elaina. So excited to be here today, and I'm so excited to get chatting with you guys. I'm Emma. I own a business called Rogue. We have 3 stores in downtown Manhattan, and we sell a lot of vintage, our own original line, but we also do a lot of experiential activations. We do a lot of events with underground artists. Musicians will come through, also talent of all sorts, like creators, YouTubers, and stuff. Yeah.
What's up, guys? How you doing? My name's Stevie Skytel, from New Jersey, based in the Lower East Side. One of the co-founders of Lambs, which is a 3-floor facility that we started about 6 years ago now, during that pandemic that happened. You guys remember that?
The one, yeah.
Yeah, that thing that happened. But yeah, we just been doing a lot of great stuff, intertwining music, art, culture, fashion, food, experience. You know, so it's been quite a journey. I'm sure we'll dive into it. But yeah, that's just a little bit about me.
Hey guys, my name is Abhi. I'm one of the co-founders of the brand called Le Pair. We launched our store in the Lower East Side 3 years ago, and yeah, my background and my partner's background is in music. We came into starting a clothing brand with literally zero experience or idea how to do it, but we knew that we wanted to integrate, our community and network from working in music into, the lifeblood of our retail space, and figure out interesting ways of kind of bringing artists through and collaborating with them, not just on clothing, but also thinking through interesting ideas of how to have them perform and create more interesting experiences for fans that isn't just driven by making them buy tickets to come see them perform. So yeah, excited to kind of talk about everything we've been up to.
My name is Andy Friedman. Thank you, all of you, for being here. Thank you for the opportunity to share. It was nice to meet everybody here, and these are new friends, and I'm happy about that. I am the Chief Brand Officer for a chain of stores here in Brooklyn called Woodstack. We have 6 stores in the neighborhoods. We have 1 in Newark as well. I also have started a brand for us called Only One USA. Check it out. Prior to that, so I've been doing that for about 4 years, but prior to that, I spent 30 years of my career in life at Timberland. Partnerships, collaborations, things that I'm excited to share with you today. It's a huge part of my life. It's a huge part of the brand, and absolutely a huge part of culture. So thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for the introductions. Would love if each of you could just sort of walk us through each of your retail spaces. Andy, feel free to pick one. Just sort of walk us through the vibe of the store and how music plays a role in sort of curating the vibe of the space. Whoever wants to start. Go for it.
Okay. Without music, there is no anything in our stores. So when you walk in, I would say, I don't want to take it back, but the only time that we would stop the music is when a brand comes in and we're having kind of this horseshoe meeting, and we're checking product out, or they're checking out the locations. I don't want to say that we stop the music, but the music comes down to an acceptable level for conversation. But music is a huge part of who we are. Music is different in every one of our locations. I would say music is part of our revenue stream. Without that, we wouldn't survive. We just wouldn't thrive and survive. So without it, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah. I think, kind of similar to what Andy's saying, like music is such a central part of any kind of retail experience, at least for me, and I think for us especially, it's like, it's something that either consciously or not, you think about when you walk into a space. And, I think one of the main things that we really think about and really try to emphasize in terms of who we work with and who we try to support and platform is curation, and music, I think, is a really key aspect of that, so from the minute you walk in, I think, like, we are very intentional about, like, all right, what music is playing here? Who are the artists that we're bringing in? How are we choosing to align ourselves and showcase the kinds of artists that we not only, like, love and believe in, but also feel like represent us as well, So I think it's really hard to go somewhere and have, like, a disconnect between something like music, which really, like, I think becomes like an extension of a space, like a store, especially for us. And that too, to also just kind of like get a sense for like who we are as well. I think music really speaks to that part of our identity.
Music. Without music, there's no me. Me and music have a very deep marriage, if you will. Music was my original vehicle. I come from an entertainment background, so I was doing artist management. I was doing everything but rapping, so it was like, and I had to assume the position at an early age. Like, I just turned 32. I've been kind of off the porch since I was like 15, even from like the MySpace days to Facebook to Twitter to YouTube, so like I grew with all that stuff. But I started off with my crew, managing my brother Dash, Manzi, Shy Hef, and we kind of come from a cult following like background, the way that we dress, the way that we talk, the way that we walk, what it sounded like, what it felt like, was all one thing. And that's kind of what led me to where I am today, because I was able to take all my resources and my skill set and my network from music and apply it to retail. And that's kind of like taking the variable of music and putting, retail and community into that, and then that evolved into going into the art space and experiential. And I feel like because not only was I a consumer, but I was a contributor, I knew what the people needed and what it felt like, So that's why like everything that we do is pretty natural, because we all have our own individual perspectives and taste level, but when I come to the table with different things, it all comes from music, the things that we like and that we love, so it's been a long journey, like didn't just wake up one day and be like, hey, we should open a store, but it was just kind of like where things landed in the way that it did. I was able to also experience all the highs and lows with music as well, too, because, being an artist is very difficult, and also being an artist manager is probably just as difficult, So, like I was saying, like, all those things kind of led us to where we are today. So, thank God for music, and hip-hop especially, you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yes, thank God for music. So when you walk into one of the Rogue stores, you will always hear the Rogue playlist playing. Music, like all the boys have said, it's integral to any retail experience, and I kind of have built out my stores to kind of resemble like the ultimate Y2K bedroom. Like you walk in there and you should feel like you're walking to your older brother's bedroom. in the 2000s, our older sister's bedroom. So with that, we've curated, like, I think it's like an 8-hour-long playlist of like all the 90s, 2000s hits, even going into the 2010s. And it's interesting, you were saying, Andy, how like in your store you never shut off the music, except for like when people come in and have a meeting or something. If the music goes off in a store, it's unshoppable. So music it's like empty. It feels dead in there. You know what I mean? So it's just so important to have music playing nonstop, and it's so cool. Like when you have your own retail space, you're able to curate it in exactly the way you want it to be, to evoke a certain emotion. So the music we choose to play just kind of makes everyone feel very nostalgic. They feel safe in there. They feel like cozy. I don't know. It just invokes like a feeling of nostalgia. So that's how it feels when you walk into Rogue.
I love that. Emma, that's a nice segue into my next question. Abhi, I feel like you can speak to this very well. I wonder, same with you, Stevie, you just had Kenny Mason in the store last week. I wonder how else you guys sort of use music to build community, be it through events or partnerships or just other, IRL activations that go down in the store.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that we really wanted to focus on when we first opened the space, and that was really important to me too, was just like, I remember being like late high school, early college, coming up to the city and like being able to go to certain spaces that weren't necessarily concert venues, but they hosted musicians or artists that I was a fan of or whatever. Like those moments really stuck with me. But that's also even how I found out about certain brands, and I'm probably going to age myself, but like, getting like into Mishka back in the day or whatever it was like a lot of that was like the intimate connection between brands and music. And I think like fashion and clothing was a huge kind of vehicle for me to also just like learn about either. It was like a weird kind of like exchange between the two. It's like, all right, cool, I like love this artist, and then they're talking about this brand. I've never heard of that. Oh, that's crazy. I like this brand a lot. And then like I find out about these other artists, and I don't know, it was just a really lovely kind of back and forth. And so, I think for us it was such a crucial thing to think about our flagship space not just as like simply a retail store, but also like how do we become a hub for this, right? And so, what began as just thinking about, all right, like, we've got artists that we used to work with, like Omar Apollo or, like, or Denzel Curry or whoever, and they were just like, hey, we want to create like a fun moment, we have this new single or this album coming out, but I think it would be amazing if like we get like a flatbed truck in front of the store and like perform on there and piss off the cops, and we're like, absolutely, let's do that, And so I think, the stores have become, like our space has become such a wonderful place that like people will continue to come in and they'll be like, I loved this one event you did, but now I also found out about the brand and that was amazing. Or people were like, I love this brand, but I didn't know that like, this artist that I'm a huge fan of was gonna be here. And that was really amazing for me because I got to see them in a much more intimate setting or venue, even if though it was like me and 500 other people like all crowded on the streets of like Orchard and Broome, So I think Stevie and I are really good at pissing off our neighbors, but part of that really I think boils down to just like how do we like getting together people to celebrate these artists, you know what I mean? But also simultaneously, like these artists also in many ways are a reflection, I think, of like the brands that we're trying to build. And, it's very easy to just be like, all right, cool, we make these things, we hope you come buy them. But I think it's a lot harder to kind of cultivate like a continuous practice of like programming that kind of speaks to like people that, see your brand and want something more than just like, I like what you make, I think it is really important to kind of speak to like, who are you and like what matters to you, or what do you think is beautiful and important, and how are you finding ways to kind of showcase that or platform people within your retail space,
Stevie, do you have anything to add to that?
I think that like I said, music is the vehicle, so it like brings everybody in. Even when you're doing music, you have to figure out the component of performance and merchandise. To have a brick and mortar space to do that, and to have a hub where we could have all these people centralized, and especially with our location in the Lower East Side, we have like, I guess, number 9 hottest block in the world according to Time Out magazine. Like Orchard Street is like the shit, between like La Pear, Lambs. like Awake, Extra Butter, like Emma Rose up the block too, you know. So like our whole little sector is just bumping, you know. It's just so much flavor and stuff. And I think it's like he said, like a practice for having like good programming going on, and also not having just one centralized demographic. Like just yesterday, we had a Run DMC, so like I was imagining like people that come off of work coming there, you know. So it was just like they had like slacks and like button ups up, and then they had their Adidas going down, you know. So, you know, that was on Friday. Then Wednesday we had Kenny Mason, and that was like a whole different crowd, you know. So to be able to be like the common denominator for just like cool shit and just, you know, the experience, you know, of like penetrating all five senses is like super important, you know. When you come to the spot, to have the music playing, to have the, you know, the smell good going on, like it's all relative to each other, you know. So yeah, that's like super pivotal in the space. And you could tell who's working too by the playlist that we have going on. Like you could tell like my partner Scotty's in the shop, like he have like DJ Premier and like Gangstar on, and then like if G's working, like he's gonna have like Lucky X playing and shit. But then if it's like Sunday, I'm gonna have like Sade and like the Sacred Souls and stuff like that. So it's just all like a wide range of just good stuff. Yeah.
Okay, what was the question again? Sorry.
How, I mean, with you, I feel like there's always a new musician shopping for an outfit in less than a minute in Rogue. How do these IRL moments in store through music, like how else does music build your community?
Yeah, well, I think it kind of all started, like, it's crazy. We're going on 5 years. In June, it'll be Rogue's 5-year anniversary. So to look back, like, we started doing fit checks, which I think was, like, kind of our initial dive into, like, the social media short form realm. And once we started doing those, like, a lot of artists wanted to begin coming through and start showcasing what they were wearing because maybe they had a local show at Mercury Lounge. So, of course, I want to be there to, you know, co-sign this young emerging artist. One of the first artists we ever worked with was Holly Humberstone. I don't know if you guys know her. She's a British artist. She literally just played Coachella, I think.
Yeah.
Which is incredible. Like we did her very first pop-up with her in 2021, and we did a acoustic show with her in the street. 200 people came. We did also like a closet sale swap with her. She brought like a suitcase full of her luggage, and all her fans brought a piece of clothing to swap with her wardrobe. So that was really like our first introduction into like the way we could collaborate with artists in a really community-centered way. And ever since that moment, I was like, wow, like this was so cool. We got to keep doing this. So since then, we've done meet and greets with artists. We've done merch collabs. We recently did one with Molly Santana last summer. And I'm sure you guys know she was just featured on Drake's new album, which is absolutely insane. Like, so for me, I really love like finding these young artists and being able to like tap in with them before they hit that mainstream. And we've been able to do that too with like, I don't know, like The Help. We did a simple fit check video with them like a couple of years ago, and like it turned into this whole internet meme. And like I think people were clowning them at first, but now everyone is wearing skinny jeans and like getting into this like heady boy era. So there's so many ways. I don't know. It builds community. Yeah.
On that note, I would love if each of you could share one of your favorite things that has happened in your store, be it a concert, just it could be a random anecdote from one random day, but yeah, just an experience that you feel like is your favorite or like really speaks to the ethos of your brand.
I would say like there's a bunch of cool stuff to purchase in the store, but like to me it's really not about that. It's about like meeting all these like really beautiful individuals, you know, like I've really have a bond with these people that I encounter with every day. Like I got a genuine love and care for them, you know, like even like I feel like Lambs also brought me closer to like one of my best friends, Omi. You know, like I've known him like for many years before that. He goes by STFU, but he gave me a gift, which was a hat in the store one day, and then I'm like, damn, we should sell these. And then it was like a $125 hat, which was like kind of expensive, but he brought 6 and we sold them in the weekend. And like, it was like, damn, that like we could probably do some more stuff. And then that whole, like, our whole relationship evolved into, like, a way bigger thing. And now we're, like, individually doing stuff with, like, Nike and stuff like that. And, like, that's, like, amazing. Even, like, finding somebody like Gabe Roselle, who's done a bunch of, like, work with Ed Hardy and Affliction and Diesel and stuff like that. But he comes from Lambs as well, too. You know, he was sleeping on the floor of one of our interns' house, like, came from Portland. And that's just, like, I love that shit. You know, like, I've been there before, you know, like, just coming with your suitcase and just figuring it out and thugging it, you know, and just having a place that we can feel safe in to do that is probably the best thing. That's, like, one of the most fruitful portions of just having community and having people and just having a whole village, you know. Like, it really takes a village. So, like, when you see me, like, you see all of us, you know, and just like, and I say that for like all the individuals that come to the shop, you know, like we're a unit, you know, so I feel like that's like one of the most important things, one of the most important elements of the store, you know.
So, you know, what was almost a full circle moment for me was a few months ago. The guys from Smith & Wesson shot a video outside our store at Linden. There's a shopping mall out there where we have a great store. And I had known these guys for a long time, the boot camp clique, you know, my Timberland days, and I would feed them product. So it was just, you know, like you were saying, Steve, like these are moments, like real moments that you created. I mean, you created an incredible moment yesterday. And these are incredible moments because I don't want to get too profound here, but life is life. And, you know, Run DMC, there were people missing, right? It was, so, you know, to create a moment and for people to be able to be there, I think is very, very important, especially in days like today, really. It really is. But creating moments like that and also meeting musicians in our store, for me, personally, to shop them through the location, explain the brand to them, explain other brands to them, is really a true gift. And I think, you know, the more you get to do it, the more you, people are people, and you know, you're able to talk to them like real, true people, and not the celebrities that they are, or in front of camera or behind camera. And I think a lot of them respect that. So I think, you know, that's been very, very nice. Yeah.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I can go. I think what I love about having a space like this is between both the location and also just kind of what it is. It's like there is a certain, like, I'll have like these, like, you know, not to sound corny or cliche, but like these like kind of moments of like appreciation where it's like oh yeah, anything can really happen here in like a really wonderful way. You know, there's like I think on a day-to-day, like, I love the serendipity of just like, you know, I'll be like, you know, at the store, at our studio or whatever, and like somebody will stop by, and I'm like, this is just such a lovely thing that can just happen, you know? Like, I don't know about the other folks on this panel, but like, I've also worked like a 9 to 5, and that does not happen in there, you know what I mean? And so there is something like beautiful to just like be like, yeah, we have this beautiful space, and part of my job is just being able to like see people, you know? And I think like it could be kind of like you're saying, like artists to like, you know, maybe potentially celebs to more often than not just like everyday folks that are just kind of walking through, and then that, you know, you get to kind of talk to them about like, what is it that you do there? You know, they'll ask about like, whoa, this painting's amazing, and I'm like, I get to get really excited because I'm like, that's a painting by my friend Taylor Simmons, and he's an incredible, incredible artist, and, you know, was kind enough to be like, hey, you guys are opening this store, like I would love to like display one of my paintings. And I was like, absolutely, like I can't think of a better reason to like work with friends and have them show up in different ways within the space as well, you know? And so I think in a lot of ways, like, you know, the space kind of becomes this beautiful vessel for like all of these kinds of interactions, you know? And then like, you'll have other surreal moments, you know, like I'm sure like it was for you with like Run DMC, you know, or like for us last summer, you know, we were like lucky enough to host Zoran in like June, you know, kind of before things started getting crazy. But the whole idea was like, we're gonna get together a bunch of creatives and musicians and artists to kind of canvas for him and whatever. And I remember like people would be like walking by, like seeing him speak in the store. And if you've been by the space, you'll know we have like really tall, big windows. And so it's like, you can absolutely see what's going on in there. And, you know, so it's just kind of funny as he was like speaking, like people are walking by and they're like, oh my God, like, you know, I think that's Zoran, you know what I mean? And then just even being able to do like something like that, you know, versus like having like an outlandish celebrity like J Balvin there. It's like these kinds of things can coexist in the same space. And I think it's kind of nice because I think people appreciate that too, you know? It's like, it doesn't have to just be like, well, we do one thing one way, or it's like, all right, cool, yeah, like next month we're doing like a poetry reading with like Whoa Vicky. And it's like, if I tell people that, they're like, what do you mean? And it's like, the fun thing is it's like, we can just do that. That's like the whole point of the space. Also, come to that event. It'll be crazy, I'm sure.
That's fire. I want to come to that.
I want to come to that.
Yeah, I will be there.
But yeah, to touch on what Avi said, it's like, if you, like the cool thing about owning a store is you could do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Like that's the best part about it. So it's like, you have these little kids, like I have like these first, second, third graders that come to the store that are like, oh my God, like they literally will start crying because they've watched our reels and shorts, like binge them, and they'll be so excited, like, oh my gosh, I saw, I don't know, so-and-so was here, or whatever. And then like having those moments with those kids is just so incredible because they are the future, and being able to inspire them in any sort of way, help them develop their style in any way, introduce them to a new artist because we featured them on our page that will then become their favorite artist, that like after seeing that video, maybe they'll learn to play the guitar from that and then they'll go headline Coachella. You know what I mean? It's like this trickle effect that I don't even think we are thinking about it on like this huge scale that it could, you know? For me, it's all about the kids. But then also there's like these amazing celebrity moments that happen. Obviously we built up to them over time, but like Post Malone came a couple years ago. That was an insane moment, and I'm so grateful for that. But then, like for example, we had like a pop-up DJ set with Omar Plus like last summer that we made happen in like 2 days. I wasn't even there because I was like out on a shoot or something. But my team handled it, and we had like 200 kids in our store just like moshing to Omar Plus like on a random Thursday. And these are the moments that like I'm just so grateful for, and they really are shaping the community and the culture, and like people are gonna think back on these memories. I don't know, it's like I always think back to like the V-Files days. Like you were talking about Mishka, I think about V-Files and I'm like, wow, like maybe these kids one day will think about Rogue that way.
I mean,
know?
just a little quick story. You know, your store used to be Prohibit, and I used to hang out at your store.
Prohibited?
Prohibit. Yeah, it was like a.
Oh, the location I'm in on Allen Street.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Pardon, you got multiple
Yes.
spaces and shit. But yeah, the one on Allen Street. I used to hang out in that spot, and a gentleman named Chase Infinite used to run it. But he's like from a rap group from the West Coast, but he came out here and he actually started managing A$AP Rocky before he blew up. You know, but I used to hang out in your store, and there used to be a basement down there, and you could find like Kendrick Lamar or like Schoolboy Q or like Danny Brown or A$AP Rocky in your basement.
That's crazy.
That's when I used to hang out there. Like, I don't know, what year is it right now? 2026. 'Cause I think the year was like 2012 or some shit back then. Yeah,
Oh my
but
God.
yeah, your place has a lot of history to it as well. So it's all about the kids, you know. It's about the moments that we creating for the kids. 'Cause I was a kid then. As much as I was like working and trying to figure out how to be like the best manager and stuff, like I was a kid there trying to just assume my position and get in where you fit in. But at the same time, I was like soaking up so much game, and it was a privilege to even just be in those rooms, you know, and then to also understand what that felt like and to be able to convey that to like the newer audience, because they're gonna look back at this in like 10 years and like, damn, I remember going to Emma Rogue, or like I remember seeing Post Malone or Omar Plus, or whatever the case may be.
I think it's about like creating those moments.
For sure.
Andy, did you want to add?
Yeah, Emma, you jogged my memory. So I've been there. I've been at Woodstack for a little over 4 years. we've had such incredible activations and then ones prior to me as well. But one that really comes to mind was one that we had done for Adidas. We partnered up with Harold Hunter Foundation for at our store on 98th Street in Brownsville, Brooklyn, not far from Betsy Head Park. So people that skate, I don't skate, but I know Betsy Head Park, and I know people who do skate, and that's a very important park to the culture and to the neighborhood, and we're so close to that, and we wanted to do something that could connect people, kids, to our store. And we had a panel of pro skaters, and we had about, I would say, 40 or 50 kids who came in. We got boards from Upper Westgate because I knew my buddy who had
Shout out to Chris.
Shout out to Chris. A-Life forever,
Original A-Life,
right?
yeah.
And Chris, I bought the boards from Chris, by the way. Chris
Very
didn't
nice.
donate, but we got to support.
He's got to support Upper
Gotta
West
support.
Skates.
Absolutely. And we gave out boards. We had skaters sign the boards for these kids. And one thing that really stood out to me, because each one of the kids really got to share their story. One of them was just continued to be bullied at the park. These were not all great stories. It's a very tough neighborhood. And parents came up, caretakers came up to us afterwards and said, I'm begging you not to stop. You can't stop doing these things. You need to continue this because we need this in our neighborhood. And, it meant a lot to me because it really forced us to come out of our shell. We're not a skate store at all, but we are not far from that place that these kids go to. And so, you are, like you had mentioned, where your stores are, and to me that's like the real epicenter of so much. And our stores are part of that community, right? And you just have to think how far out do these things go that you do. And it's a ripple effect. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
Wow. Continuing on, I would love to hear, I feel as though all of you have been or are pretty closely tied to like the hip hop space and what's going on in that area of the music scene. So would love if you guys could share more how you feel hip hop and how specifically the underground scene are impacting what we're seeing in the fashion trend cycle.
I think it all starts with hip hop. I don't know if that's me being biased
Yes,
or
sir.
not, but like it all starts with hip hop, and it starts from the underground because on the micro level, I feel like that's what the macros are looking at. Like all the big people that are doing stuff, they're looking at what's going on in the street. And I think like also with like social media being like such a tool, we're able to like showcase and broadcast what we're doing, what we're feeling, what we're wearing, and like that speaks volumes, and like the reach on that is so strong, so I think that we gotta keep that perpetuating right there, and doing more things like this, with all the great work Al's been doing with Move Forward Music and stuff like that, and having these discussions and having opportunity to like voice these things, so it's all relative to each other, from like the fashion to the music to the art, it's all like self-expression, and I think there needs to be more outlets for us to express ourselves in like a positive way, because the world's already fucked up. There's already enough stuff going on outside, so for us to be able to do these things in places is like so important. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah.
But okay, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, at the heart of it, we sell a lot of vintage, so, and 90s and Y2K are super popular still, so like we're selling FUBU, academics, Sean John, like all these brands are super relevant today. Maybe even more than they were at their, I don't know. Well, they actually had huge peaks. So I don't know, but it's so cool that all the kids now are loving these like vintage brands that are hip hop leaning. But I think the underground is super, super impactful when it comes to fashion. Like, that's who I look at to help curate my store, right? Like, me and my buying team, we're always on TikTok looking and seeing what are the young kids wearing. Like, what is, I don't know, like what's Fake Mink wearing? What's Addison Rae wearing? I know she's not underground, but you know what I mean. Like Skywater, what's Skywater wearing? And it really is prevalent in the macros and these big fashion houses. I mean, look at Gucci, like who just walked the runway, like Fake Mink and Netspend. So I don't know. They're definitely pulling from the underground. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I what I've always found really interesting is I feel like hip hop and rap, obviously that's a whole other thing about that being an umbrella term for like what a wide ecosystem that is. But I feel like in general as like a genre, and for me like so many artists within that space, it's like I feel like it is that experimentation in terms of what you're wearing, what you gravitate towards. I've always kind of loved the range in general, and also like the juxtaposition. I think what I really find interesting is sometimes it's like, the biggest thing that I feel like is really interesting is when like, we'll have certain artists come in and they're like, I'll see what they gravitate towards. And then honestly, like this happens every time. I'm all in my mind, I'm like, oh, you're gonna like this. And then like they'll go for other things. And I'm like, I didn't really picture that. But it's like you kind of get to see like how like other people see themselves kind of in what you're making, but also simultaneously like you see them and you're like, oh, I feel like I have a grasp on like what kinds of clothes or what kinds of brands or stylistically what you're into. And so I think while like the constant inspiration is definitely out there, and I feel like everything kind of comes back to like hip hop and rap, especially within like American culture writ large. I also think it's really interesting to kind of think about like this like other kind of conversation, I think, where it's like you see like, okay, cool, I'm interpreting this, but then like when you then have like your own brand or whatever, and you see like who gravitates towards what, it kind of becomes like a larger like, all right, I'm now watching these pieces or like this like collection or whatever get reinterpreted through the lens of somebody. And I think that kind of constant reinterpretation is really probably like what I find the most kind of interesting.
Jumping off of that, I feel like there are a small but, growing collection of brands or footwear pieces, sort of like the Timberland boot. You were saying FUBU, Ed Hardy, brands and pieces that have sort of become iconic across both music and fashion. Andy, you spent 30 years at Timberland. I would love to hear more about, do you feel as though there are any other silhouettes or just brands that have sort of stamped their impact the way Timberland did with the wheat, or, a Yankee fitted hat, like any other, pieces that are sort of the epitome of that convergence?
That's a great question. So I want to start this off by saying that if you look at how the company that I worked for before, Timberland, and hip hop are inextricably linked. Period. End of sentence. I don't want to drop the mic because I'll break it. Might as well. But I would say also hip hop would have existed anyway. It would have it evolved. Um, I can tell you that Timberland would not be here if it was not for if it were not for hip hop. Period. It has kept the lights on at the brand that I spent 30 years of my life at, that I love, and it wouldn't be what it is today, on people's feet and in people's minds. Um, I would say that there are certain silhouettes that Biggie certainly is one of the most iconic figures that has made the 6-inch boot what the 6-inch boot is. Tupac has made the 40 below. There's nobody that can do that. There's nobody who can make that kind of boot look and feel the way
Yeah.
it is. And I was looking at a picture the other day of someone who was wearing it, who was shot stylistically inside, like indoors, wearing that boot. And I said, like, somebody, I was with somebody and I said, I don't like that picture. They said, well, why? Why don't you like it? You like that person in the picture? I said, I would do. Absolutely. But that boot really needs to be shot outside. So, those kinds of things. I was also fortunate to have worked with DMX, who, when I said to DMX, why always Timberland? Why are you always wearing, how do you feel? He looked at me like I had like 10 heads. He's like, you have to understand, I'm not me without that. That is an extension of him. And you bring up different silhouettes. Those are two that specifically I would say are tied to those
Yeah.
people.
Just to like kind of piggyback off that, I feel like these shoes have become part of like the attitude geographically. Like when you think of the East Coast and you think of New York or you think of New Jersey, you got to think about the Timberland and I think the Air Force One. And it just as much as like the Yankee hat. But it's just like a whole like attitude and style that kind of like you know kind of went off to like all different demographics. Like you could be 70 years old or you could be 15 years old. And just because I had this thought earlier too, as much as we're bigging up hip hop too, I think we also got to talk about like rock and roll and punk. I feel like a lot of people's attitude today is more like rebellious and rogue, no pun intended. But like hearing the sonics of like the youth these days, they're definitely on a more screamo, energetic, like hyper type of wavelength right now, and I was watching some of the clips from like Rolling Loud recently, and I'm like, damn, there's so many different people. They all kind of sound the same a little bit to me though. And that's just me being honest. That's my own personal opinion. But like, it's like, but that's what it is right now. And you just gotta respect it and you gotta roll with the punches, like I don't want to be so disconnected from the youth because I'm still in the youth, even though I'm in my 30s. But like, I'm like, damn, this is where we're at with it right now. So it's just you also gotta like do the knowledge and like and reflect on times. Everything comes in circles, everything comes in waves, like, whether it's 5, 10, 15, 20 years. The same shit was happening when Run DMC was around. Around that same time, you had places like CBGB and stuff like that. And you had like Bad Brains, and all these different things that were going on. So it's the same things that happened then are happening now, but probably just like in a more evolved and like I don't like it's just a different concoction, between like the people, places, and things that are happening, you know.
Yeah, I agree completely. I don't know if I have much to add on that.
That's okay.
That was great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you guys. On that note, I wonder specifically, each of you guys, which communities or creative groups or individuals even are inspiring you right now? Feel maybe they're bringing something new to the space that we need. Yeah, just anyone that you feel like is inspiring you creatively. Take it away.
So I thought of that. And I'm a storyteller type of guy. Like I love stories. And it's also, that's why I love retail so much too, right? When I say retail, and I think we'll talk about brick and mortar after, there's something very special about brick and mortar that shopping online just can't compare. But guys like Izzy Izzo, like on Complex, I like I like that storytelling type of vibe. I like that, and it just it gives you a different perspective on different cultures that or different things that I don't know if I would ever really be able to pay attention to. So, I think guys like that, absolutely.
Yeah, I think musically, I just right now I feel like my friends probably find this really annoying, but I just keep talking about like the underground music scene in London right now. I feel like I just
Yes.
discover
Talk about
a new
it.
artist every day, and I'm just like, how is there just like an endless well of
Yeah.
like, just interesting artists that are all over the place. You know what I mean? Like it's not even just like it's one sound. Like obviously, like yeah, you've got the fake minks and the fangs, but there's also like this kid Sun Forever, and I like got hip to his music, and I was just like I feel like I'm listening to like a kind of like weird devotional, but also like folky, like bluegrass, but also like stuck in like a washing machine. And it sounds insane to describe, but it all works. And you like hear that and you're like, this is crazy. But then like, I don't know. I think that to me is really inspiring. I'm not saying like it's not happening here, but right now it's like I think what I love about keeping up with like what's coming from another place and really starting to be fans of like people that also now are much younger than me, which I think is a different kind of experience too as I'm getting older, where I'm like, all right, cool. Like it's really interesting to be like, looking at like kids that are like 11, 12 years younger than me. And I'm like, that is so crazy that you're doing this. And like, it's like, I can't even imagine that. And so, yeah, I really find that inspiring. And I think what's so fun is it's like, you kind of like, it feels like you're watching like a moment happening, and like as like a scene is really starting to like kind of like build and like grow momentum, and also you're just like I just don't even know what's going to happen next, but it's also feels like it's going to be something I look back on being like I remember that stretch when it was like just like X, Y, and Z, all of these different names.
Yeah.
Um, what is the question again? What music inspires me?
Which communities or creatives are inspiring you right now?
Oh man, I
Could be anywhere you're drawing inspiration from.
yeah, Orchard Street.
Yeah.
I'm drawing inspiration from Orchard Street because there's so many different people that come there. Like, not even to be biased or like whatever, but it's like, I might meet somebody from Japan coming down the block, or like somebody from London coming down the block, or a kid from Brooklyn or Queens or Philadelphia. And they're all coming to like these centralized locations, and you see so many like varieties of people, and I feel like I'm drawing inspiration from them, and like they're like sparking ideas in my mind of like what this looked like here and what this is here. I went to Philly recently, and I was so uh interested in how like segregated it was over there. Like people from like different blocks and different neighborhoods. Like, this kid might come from the streets, and like this kid was doing fashion, and they didn't know about each other, but they're right there, but they have a similar common interest. And I was like, man, y'all need to meet each other. Like y'all should connect with each other, and it's just I think it's like the common denominator of like really dope stuff and like, high level taste of like just whatever the information is that we're like digesting and consuming, so I think like really being like inspired, like no cliche, but like from the streets, from like the actual outside world. And you could reflect on the internet and like look on the internet and see what's going on because it might not be right in front of you, but like there's so much things happening outside that like put your phone down and go like look around a little bit. There's a lot of cool stuff happening outside. So I think that's where a lot of the spark is coming from.
Yeah, I agree. I'm definitely inspired by all the youth and the kids that come through our doors. Um, they have some of the most unique style that I've ever seen. But on a personal note, I really like the Frost Children right now, and everything about their that not only their music, which I love, but aesthetically and their imagery. I love how nowadays kids are paying so much attention to imagery in general and visuals, and like there's such a heavy emphasis on like the videos and the music videos. For me, I'm such a visual person, so I love seeing how important it is. It's almost equally as important as the music now, which is really cool to see. So I love seeing like the new styles of music video evolve. I'm also really into like I think the femme cells are really cool image wise. Like they have a really cool aesthetic, and it's like a weird kitschy maximalist thing, but it works. And I feel like I know we're in the skinny kind of Hedy Slimane era, but like I feel like soon this kitschy, weird, colorful maximalist vibe is gonna come through too.
On that note, I wonder if you guys can point to any artists who you feel are actual tastemakers. You know, obviously we have ASAP Rocky, Travis Scott fronting these, big campaigns, these big collaborations. Are there any artists that you feel are genuinely, directly impacting what we're seeing in fashion?
Low key, I feel like some of like Frost Children and Femcells are definitely tastemakers because the visuals are so important. I feel like Molly Santana definitely is a tastemaker. Like she's inspired so many girls, especially to like I feel like I know girls that like have started rapping and making music because of her, which is really cool. Um, yeah, let me think a little more.
Yeah.
I look at it like a tree, more or less, like, these different branches. Because, when you mention, you know, places like Prohibit and like what was there, which was like Diamond Supply and like different pop-ups like that, and people like Currency and Wiz Khalifa, and like what that style kind of turned into. And then you would have like the ASAP Rockies after that, and where they were mixing like the high end with the streetwear mixed with like southern too, and it was like a whole like fusion of that, and made people like regionally be accepted to wear different things, like the Soldier Rags and grills and Rick Owens and shit like that. And I feel like that kind of evolved into, like also like what like Lil Wayne was wearing, and then like what Young Thug was wearing, and now with like kind of like the Playboy Cardis and like them old way boys and stuff like that, and like how that whole thing is. And I feel like it's just like a whole like trickle down like domino effect of style. I don't really dress like that though, but yeah, I see it in the youth though, for sure.
Something that we've sort of been circling around this whole time, Andy, as you mentioned before, the importance of brick and mortar. Especially in this city, so much of culture is happening online. Why do you guys feel, it's important to have a brick and mortar space, for your brand? You wanna go?
Um, I would say, well, so as somebody who is now involved in retail, so I switched the sides from a brand side to retail side. The hardest thing to do is to actually get a customer to come in the door. There are people that walk by the door every single day, and once they're coming in, once they're in, once they pull that door, um, I think you've achieved the hardest thing. And once that happens, it's really up to us to determine whether it's the music, the scent, the taste, the vibe in the store, the brands that we carry, what the service is like. We haven't talked about, staffing and service. That's
Heavy on the service. You gotta be nice to the people.
got to be nice to the people. They come in, they
They spend their money with you.
spend
You
their
know,
money.
and their
Right,
time.
right.
Their time,
Yeah,
most importantly.
absolutely. Those things are, they might sound very simple, but it's not easy at all. And I would say, once they come in, and as we're planning new stores, one specific one that we're going to open in Harlem, we have to change what we are all about right now, and make that just a very different shopping experience. And what that means is enhancing music and giving people. I mean, you see, obviously, there's I grew up with turntables, right? I don't want to date myself, but the point is that I grew up being a DJ downstairs in our basement. So now that is like that's acceptable, and that's a great thing to have in stores, whether it's at your place or ALD, or having Macintosh systems at Kith, and in in West Hollywood. These are things that are now, I don't want to say analog is becoming a thing. I don't want to go Gary Vaynerchuk on people, but the point is that people want, once they're in the door, tell me, show me, take me around, show me what to do, show me what to buy, tell me why. I want to know. And that's the grail. That's the holy grail right now.
Absolutely. I mean, I think if you come around our parts, like, like every day I'm in the front waving at people trying to bring them in, Yeah, like I'm trying to bring them in. And like my whole thing really isn't to sell you on something. I'm here to give you something. I'm going to give you information, I'm going to give you an experience, and you could take it or you could leave it. And if you take it, you don't have to buy nothing. It's like enough stuff here for you to make a choice and a decision. There's a lot of cool options. But I think it's really about how we're conveying the information to the audience and the consumer, and figuring out different ways to say the same thing in different ways. Yeah, say the same thing in different ways. So every time that we, bring a customer in, like, I share the same information with the team over at Lambs. Like we greet them, see how they're doing. I ask them how they feel first of all before anything, before I just like shove a bunch of information down there in their face and stuff like that. But I think like being a human is like the most important thing, and like that's like where it starts first. You gotta be just like a just good person. Like make sure the vibes is right first.
Yeah. I mean, online shopping is cool, but it will never ever compare to that IRL experience you get. For me, it's all about curating a memorable experience that a customer or even just a person walking into the store, like they'll leave feeling happy. That's my goal, or maybe inspired in any type of
Right.
way. Whether they're looking at my decor and seeing like a little Snoopy from like 1950, and they're like, "Oh my God, my mom used to make me watch Snoopy on the weekend." Like like that's a memory that'll make them happy, and like, okay, now they're in my store, feeling happy, feeling safe. Okay, what's next? You know what I mean? Like just invoking those feelings is super important for me. Also, like, I mean, it's obvious, but like the five senses, like when you go into a store, you can touch, you can see, you can hear, you can
Heavy.
feel. You can't do that online. Um, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think
Nailed it.
I think for I feel like an extension of question two is like having a brick and mortar by itself isn't enough. I feel like it's really interesting. Like the four of us,
Yeah.
it's really crucial for all of our spaces that it's like if it was just there and people just kind of walk by it or whatever, like that actually isn't good enough, right? It's like half of the battle is obviously, and it's a you know it's a big part of the battle, but like just having the space, I don't think is enough. It's really like what are you doing to one get people in the door, two once they walk in the door, like I can't tell you how many times I've gone to stores and been like, holy shit, like these people are really mean, or like I don't feel like they want me in here. You know what I mean? And for me, for Stevie, for Emma, for you, like I feel like it's so crucial that it's like somebody walking through that door, like it actually can be scary sometimes going into a store, and I feel like people actually like don't really think about that because it's like, I'm not saying it's like a huge act of bravery to walk in there, but like it can be a little daunting sometimes where you're like, I don't know, man, like I've never been in there, I don't know what this is, I don't know these people, and just to have like one from like a retail experience, like the people working there being super outgoing and personable, and also like you said, even just starting with like, hey, how are you, how's it going, like, you know what I mean, before you jump into like, let me figure out like what I can like tell you about these things and whatnot. I think that intention matters. And then I think for me too, like being able to really like it makes such a difference. Like sometimes like I'm not early on, like I'd be working the floor sometimes when we'd first open the store, just because I was like, I want to just do this. But you notice how much of a difference it makes when you meet people and they find out that it's like, oh, I didn't know you started this brand, or like, this is so amazing to hear about like your story, or like why, where these things are made. What is the effort and the intention and craft that went into making that. And I think extending that personal connection, I think people are constantly looking for alignment, truthfully. You know what I mean? It's like I think about myself when I walk into stores or whatever it might be, and it's like the small things where I'm like, okay, cool, I love that book. Oh, they have this record here. Oh, they're playing this artist. It's like I like to be like, okay, cool, this is awesome. Like these are like this is a place that I would come back to, you know? And obviously, like, yes, I would love it if you spend money with us. Like that's great. But you know, what I really appreciate more is like when people are like, I really like that store because one, the people there are awesome. I like respect or appreciate the things that they make. And then three, like I feel like this is a space that like if I were to do something or whatever, like I would want to like have something like that, right? And I think that's kind of the goal and like the dream for me, right? Is it's like when people kind of feel like, okay, cool, like I feel and at some level either like seen in this space or just kind of like this is like my kind of place. And I think that's like, you know, super crucial.
Could I just add what I think like what I was listening to you speak and I agree with everything. And it's what it comes down to is just like creating that real human connection. That's really it. You know, that at its simplest form for me, you know?
AI cannot do this right here. AI can't do
Oh no,
this.
no, no.
No, that's
AI
what I'm
cannot do
saying.
that.
Yeah,
No, no, no.
like in this like digital age and stuff, where like AI is becoming like so like prime and stuff. Like, nah, you gotta keep the human interaction going. Like everybody's like
Yes.
experiences and taste level is from our life, and that is valuable. So I think our work is a reflection and extension of us, and our establishments and our brands and our businesses are extensions of us as well too. So we gotta we gotta keep going as people.
I also just think, sorry, just my last little soapbox. I think shopping online sucks. I truthfully, I think it's like probably one of the worst experiences ever. I don't really like, can't think of like a worse way to be like, oh cool, like I see this thing and then like go through like the hoops of like I hope it fits, I hope it's this, I hope it's this, and it's like I think nothing will replace the experience of like going in somewhere. And also like I can't tell you the number of times I've gone in places and I've been like I would never even dream of wearing this, and then somebody either convinces me like in a good way or like opens me up a little bit and they're like maybe you should try that on, and I'm like actually yeah you're right, and like I end up like walking away with something and I'm like cool, I didn't really like I wouldn't have had that experience if I was just like looking at a static image on a screen and then like trying to do like the mental gymnastics of like, whoa, if I don't like it, like I gotta go to fucking USPS to like ship this shit back. And then like, I don't know. It's just like I think like I think there's also a reason people really like gravitate towards like going back to stores again, and I think that's primarily coming from like we just already live so much of our lives like looking at screens. It's like, it's a nice way to kind of go back to being like, I have to go buy like I wear this thing. I can't just go like buy it and then be like, all right, great.
And then, I mean, each one of us, I think, has mentioned, pandemic or COVID. So when I joined Woodstack, it was the tail end of that. So, people had been very eager to go back to shopping and in person. And, um, you know, I, that's so important. The experience, the moments that you have, who you're with. We also try to tell our sales associates, our staff, like that the store is their home. Like treat it like your home. So somebody comes in to your home, you need to greet them. You need to, explain to them. You kind of get down, like you said, as a human, like be human with them, like they're people. And I think that's been very important to us, and we're going to continue to do more of that.
Awesome. I know we're coming up on time, so just one more question for you guys. Obviously, at Sounds That Move, a lot of young creatives looking, to forge community in fashion and music, in culture in general. What advice do you have for anyone, looking to make that leap and actually, build meaningful community in this space?
I think it starts with looking within first and seeing what you like and what you don't like, and then practicing those things that you like, and then also like attracting people that are like minded with you. Sometimes like you might be with a group of people and they're not on the same type of time that you're on, and that's okay. You got to keep going though, and I feel like if you know what you like and what you don't like, you'll gravitate towards that, So it's like if you like rock and roll or if you like country music or whatever, do what you like to do, and pursue that and figure out how to, not conform but adapt to those types of things and then build around that, and then like I said, you'll start attracting a certain type of people and then you get like a good team, because you gotta have a team. You can only do but so much by yourself. And if you're really good at doing shit by yourself, you probably be really, really good at doing it with a great team, And also, once you get to that level, like, don't be afraid to like let go a little bit. Like, don't be a whole control freak. It's like if you have a bird, you gotta let that bird fly. But if you have it too close, you might crush it, So it's just like certain things like that. I feel. Yeah.
I think like no matter what your craft is, you're an artist, musician, designer, um, surround yourself with positive, like-minded people that are forward thinking. Don't ever let negativity come around you or enter your circle. Your peace is so important. Okay. And that's how you maintain your focus. And I know we're talking all about IRL, but I think we're in the digital age, right? So double down right now is the time. Like, I know certain platforms might be saturated, but IG's not. Show your craft off to the world. Do not be afraid to post. And then, once you're consistent with that, then you can graduate and come to one of our stores and do a pop-up.
Absolutely.
You'll be able to build that online community and then transform it into the IRL. And then you'll go off playing stages or, during fashion shows in Milan.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I think without sounding too preachy, I feel like discipline and habits are so crucial. Like I think about like as not to be like the old man in the room, but as I get older, I'm also like I'm like wow, I wish there were certain things I'd like just been better at when I was younger, so that they would have stuck now. And I think like figuring out ways for yourself, like I think part of being a creative, and I'm sure everybody here can attest to this, it's like it is a constant process of growth in terms of like, all right, are you researching? Like, you know what I mean? Like, can you make that like a consistent part of your practice, whatever that might be, whether it's making music or whatever. So it's like, I think especially as you're in your younger years, it's so you just have the time and the space and the like mental bandwidth to do that. You know what I mean? So it's like research, you know what I mean? I think figuring out like what consistency means for you. Not everybody is going to have the same output. I think we live in like an output generation where everyone is kind of like, wow, look at me, I'm crushing. And it's like, that's great. That might not be you. So I think figuring out what does consistency look like for you and how you do that. And then, I think the other thing that I really like can't stress enough is just meeting people, but not meeting people for the sake of just meeting people, but meeting people to actually like meet people. I know that sounds insane, but I mean like, genuinely just trying to be like, hey, who are you? Like, what is it you do? And like talk to people about what they do and like try to find folks that you're interested in. And also don't be afraid to reach out. Some of my favorite interns I've ever had would not leave me alone. And it's because like genuinely, it's not that I didn't want to like get back to them or whatever, but like people are busy. Don't take shit personal and just know that like if you are consistent and persistent, folks will that will like reflect favorably upon you. Like, I remember like I had an old boss at one point. He was like, listen, if I don't get back to you after 7 times, then know that I don't like you. But if it's like within the 7, like you're fine. And I feel like that was just a good rule of thumb for me. Granted, also that was a shitty boss, but that's a different story. But I think, don't hesitate to reach out for people, ask to grab coffees, ask to meet people. I think like, kind of like I'm just saying, it's like we all got IG and all this shit. Like you can get in touch with people more easily than you think. So
You said you didn't want to preach but that's necessary. Like what you said is very necessary. Um, I agree. Take nothing personal. Um, I came from a time where I could say that phone calls mean so much. Talking to people, and yes, in real life is very different. Um, I like the whole showing up is very important. That to me is everything. And just don't take no for an answer. I mean, keep trying. I just remember my first push to working at the Timberland store when there was a Timberland store on Madison Avenue and 63rd Street. I remember, poking the door open. It was a flower shop before it was a store, before it was a Timberland store. And the person who I met was the regional, and they said, I'm sorry, we're not hiring right now. And I pushed and I pushed. And I got a chance. I got an opportunity. And you never know where these opportunities will land you. You really don't know, and you don't know, like the people that I've met today. You don't know. You don't know what you have in common until you engage. And you mentioned Chase, who I've known for so long, and Rocky, and these people mean a lot to me and have made me the person who I am. And to know that I'm meeting you guys, and it's very important. That's like, these moments are great moments. So more of these.
Well, I think that is a perfect way to close this out. Let's give our panelists a round of applause.